authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us. From personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
See you in a couple of days.
In a couple of days.
Say it again.
What you say?
Yeah.
I love you too, baby.
She eating, yo, Pops.
Hi, we're right here.
Chance right here on the phone too.
Pops, love eating all your cake, so you're not gonna have none left.
She's literally digging her face in it.
We're gonna have to buy you a new one. Yo, she's spaced down in the cake right now.
Say hey, Chance.
Happy birthday to Mom.
We love you.
Chance is right here too. You get on the phone. One more time.
Hey, Chance.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, baby. I love you.
Love you too. Miss you. See you soon.
Okay.
Again, that was Sean Diddy Combs' family calling him as he was in the MDC on November 4th, 2024. So Dr. Hendricks, that leads to my question from Kelly B's 6578. How often can Diddy have contact with his family, phone or in person?
In terms of visits, their units will have certain days of the week that they can go down to the visiting room, meet with them. In terms of the population, I mean, he's only in this unit with 20 inmates, so on the days that his family can see him, they'll have some additional time with him. They can obviously speak with him on a daily basis, up until the time they're locked down or actually in the dorm he's in. We has to be on his bunk, prior to the 9 p.m. stand-up count. And then obviously he sees him every day in court. Seeing that video, it just goes to show you, other than the alleged victims in this case, the biggest losers in all of this is his family, especially his children. Being a father of 3 small children, 1 in college. It's a tough thing to see, and it's being a warden and being in corrections for over 30 years. One of my professional priorities is always family reunification. And making sure that they maintain those bonds with their families. So he's obviously at a critical moment. Either he's probably going to be with them this weekend or maybe sometime next week, depending on how long the jury deliberates, or he could be away from them for a long amount of time. So I'm sure they were with him this weekend, spending some time with him, bonding with him, obviously, before.
Yeah, and you just think of that video, and no matter what your opinion is of this trial, of this case, of Sean Combs, especially his youngest, as a girl dad myself, who's a girl dad to a toddler, it's tough to watch, and it does kind of bring the human part of this in. Just getting an update from the courtroom, the jurors have entered. They are now getting instructions from the judge about how they'll go about their deliberations. Sierra, just because we are talking about Diddy's family, there was a piece of news that came in at the end of last week, a new civil lawsuit, not only naming Sean Combs, but also naming his son, Justin. Some very tough allegations from a woman being brought forth by Tony Busby's law firm, who's brought several civil suits against Diddy. That is separate from the trial that we're talking about here. But what have you learned? What updates do you have about how that is proceeding?
Yeah, Chris, I'm happy to break it down because one of our lights just had an issue, but we're good. I'm happy to break it down for all of you. And I first wanted to say thank you to everyone who's watching, because we have been getting a lot of amazing viewer questions and comments. And one person, our producer Jordan, sent this to me. Nat Lee says, OMG, I love Sierra. So I wanted to give her, I'm assuming, a shout out. So thank you for watching. And as Chris has been saying throughout all of this, not only does Chris have amazing hair, but please keep writing us all of your questions because we love to hear them. So let's talk about this lawsuit, right? And I actually got some viewer comments last week talking about it, and I want to be very, very clear here. Civil allegations, obviously different than criminal, and what we're talking about now are civil allegations. So this was filed a week ago on Monday. A woman under the name of Jane Doe filed a civil lawsuit against Justin Combs and included Diddy, alleging that she was raped by 3 men, including Diddy, who were wearing masquerade masks. So here's what happened. She said back in 2017, she started talking with Justin Combs via Snapchat. And Jane Doe is based in New Orleans in Louisiana. So they started talking, and she does admit in the lawsuit that she sent him risque photos. That's just something that was included in the court documents, the filings there. And then she started talking to him about how she had desires to be part of the entertainment industry. And it sounds like, according to the lawsuit, Justin said something to the fact of, oh, my dad, works in the entertainment industry. Why don't you come out here, meaning to LA, and, maybe you could be part of something. So she says in spring of 2017, she flew out to LA, and after that, things kind of went completely downhill. According to her lawsuit, she alleges that she was plied with drugs and alcohol and taken to a hotel where she says she was held as prisoner. Those are her words, by the way, from the filing. She says at one point, 3 men came in and were wearing those masquerade masks and took turns raping her. 2 of the men she said she didn't recognize. She wasn't sure who they were. But the third man she recognized as Sean Combs, something that's kind of a pattern we've talked about throughout our live coverage today, is that he is so recognizable. Not only his face, but his voice, too. And then on top of that, according to the lawsuit, Justin Combs referred to him as Pops, something you would call your dad. So she kind of deduced based on those things what he looked like, his voice, and that Pops comment that perhaps this was Sean Combs. So she filed this lawsuit. Of course, Justin Combs' team has completely denied all of this. And I actually believe that I have the statement throughout all of this. I have so much going on here, but here I have it. I want to make sure that we're fair about all of this. So I wanted to read the statement from Justin Combs' team. They say, no matter how many lawsuits are filed, it won't change the fact that Mr. Combs has never sexually assaulted or sex trafficked anyone, man or woman, adult or minor. We live in a world where anyone can file a lawsuit for any reason. Fortunately, a fair and impartial judicial process exists to find the truth, and Mr. Combs is confident he will prevail in court. And again, Jane Doe has alleged assault, battery, gender violence, and negligent supervision, all in civil court, though, different than criminal. But again, it's kind of a lot heading right into deliberations.
Yeah, it is a lot. And we've seen these lawsuits kind of pile up since Sean Combs was first arrested. Getting an update from the courtroom, the judge talking to the jury now. The evidence is the testimony, the answers and the exhibits. Arguments are not evidence. You are the sole and exclusive arbiters of the facts. What is a reasonable doubt? It's based on your common sense after carefully weighing all the evidence. So the judge now speaking to jurors, beginning to lay out these jury instructions. That's expected to take more than an hour, we've learned. And then after that, it will be in the jury's hands. Joe, I have a question for you. This is from Coco Chanel. 353. How will it proceed with the Tony Buzbee suits? Will Diddy have to go to court again for every single lawsuit?
Once something is filed in civil court, statistically speaking, 90% of them never make it to trial. And that's for one reason or another, either because they settle, which typically is favorable or at least something that's satisfactory to a plaintiff, or because the defendant was able to get rid of the case with an early dispositive motion. Dispositive, the case, the key word in that being disposed, like a motion for summary judgment. I don't know how much that's going to happen here because he basically, most of these guys, including Mr. Buzbee, have lawsuits that allege fact issues. So the question is whether it's more likely than not that these things actually occurred, creating the cause of action that in turn creates the cause for recovery. But that being said, there's 80 of them. And I don't know what allows one or other to stick out more than the others to bring them to the front of the line, so to speak. The second they filed these cases, they probably ensured that they would be in litigation for 2 to 3 years. And so nothing's going to happen right away, particularly if Diddy is dealing with appeals, dealing with things related to the criminal case. And there's a question is, you're going to try to outlast these guys, see how much they have in the way of resources, seeing whose cases actually make the most sense to potentially resolve and to get off their plate. And so there are so many going on right now. Nothing may happen right away.
Just getting the response to our first poll that we put out. How are you feeling about the trial as the verdict approaches? 37% say hopeful, 29% say indifferent, 26% say nervous, and 6% say angry. More than 1,500 of you, 1,500 people voting for that. So we appreciate all your engagement this morning. To Joe's point, Dr. Hendricks.
I cannot help but notice that the warden down here in the left-hand corner has not stopped smiling since he came on camera. He is anxiously Diddy's ass to be on a permanent no leave from prison. Okay, I don't know if y'all noticed this, but I've noticed he is smiling from ear to ear the majority of the time that he's been sitting here talking about Diddy ass being in his jail. He is over thrilled to have Diddy down there, y'all. Okay, Diddy brings a lot of high profile attention to the jail, and so they're seemingly on, notice for having Diddy in there. Okay, so not for nothing, he's getting his jollies off.
Sean Combs, however this ends, is going to be facing a lot of civil suits. If he's found guilty and he's spending time, the fact that he may have to make court appearances, and a lot of them, would that impact what prison he would be sent to?
No, it wouldn't be. They would designate him to.
See, now watch how the warden talks as he, is smiling from ear to ear about Diddy Watch.
Facility commensurate to his security needs, no matter where that is across the country. Basically, what would happen? He would be put on a federal or a state writ and sent to whatever jurisdiction to meet those standards, to meet up with to deal with those civil cases. Sometimes they may bring in some court officials to that particular location that he is to do, either an affidavit or something like that to go, to do his testimony. But no, that wouldn't it wouldn't change anything. I mean, he's going to go where he needs to be in terms of his security needs based on the length of sentence and the crimes that he would be allegedly convicted of. So no, it may drop us a little bit longer. It does take time for people to move across the country based on security and things of that nature. But no, he's going to go where he's designated to based on whatever he's convicted for.
And Joe, staying on the kind of the conversation we're having related to the civil suits, this is a question from Jesse Davin. Can the jurors use the civil suits / settlements as evidence of wrongdoing, or does the jury give those as much weight as the jury, deem necessary?
This particular jury should not be considering the civil suits at all. They shouldn't be considering anything that's admitted, particularly because, among other things, not only should it be admissible, not only should it be discussed coming in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, other than Cassie, the people that are on the stand that may have had civil suits, and then that shows up in cross. But other than that, there's still the matter of them having different standards of proof. I can be wrong on a civil suit, which is just more likely than not, which is just this careful balancing here, where it's more likely than not that something happened. But that doesn't mean that I'm convicted beyond a reasonable doubt. So the jury should only consider the civil suits that came before them in cross-examination as it pertains to Cassie, for instance, and things like that, to the extent that it may bear on the credibility of the witness. Other than that, they shouldn't be thinking, oh, no, he got sued in civil suits, so he's more likely guilty in the matter at hand, in the criminal case. They shouldn't be considering that at all.
And Dr. Hendricks' question coming in from Old Hollywood Angels. This is another one people really fascinated. I am too, just with some of the logistics of how all this works, especially related to someone as high profile as Sean Combs. Question is, I've always wondered if they bring Diddy prison food during the lunch break, or maybe food from the MDC where he's been held during lunch break, or do they bring something from the outside?
No, I highly doubt that they bring anything from the outside. I'm sure there's whatever the U.S. Marshals feed those offenders throughout the day. There is no food that leaves the MDC that travel to the courthouse in Manhattan. So whatever food that they're serving those individuals, they may have a contract food service company that may come in and provide, cold sandwiches and chips or whatever, some fruit boxes or fruit, whatever. Doing like that from local restaurants there in Lower Manhattan.
So Nobu does not deliver to the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan, I guess, in this case, even though he certainly could afford it. This is just an update coming from court. Judge, you must weigh, the judge says you must weigh to the jury, speaking to the jury, you must weigh each witness's credibility, the truth and importance of their testimony, size him or her up. You must decide. Sean Combs has been formally charged in an indictment. An indictment is not evidence. Joe, just from a couple of the lines that we've been speaking about in between some of the questions from our chat, What do you make of how the judge is going about instructing this jury about what their job is going to be when they begin deliberations?
He's doing what he's supposed to do in terms of letting them know, separate the wheat from the chaff. He was indicted. You have to make a decision based on the evidence. You can decide you heard someone testify for days or hours or whatever else, and you don't believe it. You can throw out the baby with the bathwater. You can figure out what you believe versus what you don't believe. He's really letting the jury know the parameters of what it is that they're supposed to decide, because theoretically what's supposed to happen is they go into the deliberation room and then they start applying those rules while they're looking at the evidence. Now they'll have opportunity to ask questions and things like that to get further clarification. But the judge is doing exactly what he's going to do, starting off by letting them know what their obligations actually are, how they're supposed to weigh evidence, what they're supposed to consider, what they're not supposed to consider, and going from there.
And Dr. Hendricks, a question I have, just as far as if he's found guilty, he's going to go to prison. When I think of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, you have, for example, the Supermax that's holding people like El Chapo. You might have some lower security facilities. Where does Sean Combs go? How is it determined what type of federal facility he would go to if he's found guilty?
Well, let's talk about the seriousness of the charges. If he's convicted of RICO and all these sex offenses across the board, more than likely he'll probably end up at one of the high security facilities that has a sex offender management program. And the one that I can think of off the top of my head is the United States Penitentiary in Tucson, Arizona. And then if he's convicted of, let's just say, just the sex trafficking and then the lower charges of transportation, he'll probably end up at a medium security facility that house sex offenders in Marianna, Florida, Marion, Illinois, or Petersburg, Virginia. And then if he's convicted of just the lower charges of transportation, there's several low security facilities that house sex offenders in Inglewood, Colorado, Elkton, Ohio, or Seagoville, Texas. And typically, the Bureau has to designate inmates to facilities 500 miles closest to their residence. Obviously, he has homes in New York, in Miami, Florida, Los Angeles, California. So they'll try to get him close to one of those areas. But first, it'll start off with determining what his security needs are. So those are probably the more likely areas, the institutions that he'll probably be designated to if he is convicted for all the charges or some of the lesser charges.
It's interesting how where he would go would kind of depend on how this could play out with the charges that he's facing and what this jury potentially finds him guilty of. Joe, another question coming in. This also kind of touches on the civil suits, dozens of them that Sean Combs is facing, whether or not he's innocent or guilty in this trial. Question from Gobiko Studio: would a guilty verdict affect those suits in that the Combs team would be quicker to settle, or the opposite for that matter?
To my mind, I don't know how much it would affect, because if he's convicted on the criminal side of things, he's got bigger fish to fry than what may happen, because on other things, depending on what he's convicted of, he might be facing asset seizure. And so he's going to have bigger fish to fry if he's convicted. Now, that being said, does it come a little bit further to the forefront on his plate if he actually gets off? Yeah, I think that it does, because he's probably emboldened in terms of dealing with those. But I think that one of the things that he can take advantage of, frankly, the second somebody files a lawsuit, you're looking at 1 year to 3 years until it gets all the way to the finish line. So he can actually take his time, spread his game out, for lack of a better term, and figure out which ones, from a standpoint, are the ones to deal with, which ones are the ones to get rid of, or does he just decide to hang out on each and every one of them and hold out? It's a lot harder to do that with 80 cases than if you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 10. But my sense is, of course, it's the criminal case first, and then what's happening with that is really going to dictate the speed and vigor with which he deals with everything else.
Yeah, and you just wonder too, the amount of money he is spending, not just on an all-star criminal defense team in this case, but the attorneys that will then handle the dozens of lawsuits that could go on for years? How much money, for as successful as Sean Combs is, I mean, how far will that money go? I want to bring in just another update from court. The judge now laying out the counts that Sean Combs is facing, explaining them to the jurors during these jury instructions that are believed to be going for more than an hour. And then if you're just joining us, that is when the jury will begin deliberating. Judge saying, quote, count 1, charges from 2004 to 2024, a racketeering enterprise. Count 2, from 2009 to 2018, sex trafficking of Cassandra Ventura. Count 3, from 2009 to 2018, transporting individuals, including but not limited to Ventura, for purposes of prostitution. Count 4, from 2019 to 2024, sex trafficking of Jane. That was the pseudonym for the other victim who testified. Count 5, from 2019 to 2024, transporting individuals, including but not limited to Jane, for purposes of prostitution. Each count is separate. And I also want to bring in the results of another poll. We appreciate more than 1,300 of you who voted on this one. Which piece of evidence had the biggest impact? We have surveillance footage that came in at 48%, witness testimony 30%, text messages and emails 18%. That was big for the defense throughout the trial. And then voicemails were 3%. So we appreciate everybody contributing to that poll. Sierra, I'll go out to you. Because you have covered this so much on Scandal. What were the pieces of evidence that stood out to you, and what do you make of course, the surveillance footage, 48%, but I'm a bit surprised that it wasn't a larger number because of just how much that video, it's so visual. You see it, and it was played multiple times during the trial.
Yeah, Chris, we can't talk about this particular case without talking about the Intercontinental video. And I feel like we've been talking about it for over a year at this point because it was leaked kind of a while ago. And that's when we got that really infamous Diddy apology video. And I know we did hear a lot from witness testimony, according to the poll. That is very important too. And I think why perhaps maybe it wasn't as big on our poll is because we do have that video that speaks for itself. We have the physicality there. And then we also have the corresponding testimony from Cassie, who comes on the stand and describes what led up to it, what happened afterward. And so we have kind of these two dueling things of seeing this video that is so important, and then also hearing from Cassie herself, which, by the way, the celebrity testimony in all of this, at first we kind of thought that it was going to be a bit more, but Cassie, Kid Cudi, hearing from these major names has been something that I really think drew a lot of attention to this case specifically and why we're here now covering it, which if you're interested in all of that, make sure to subscribe to my channel, Scandal, where we talk all things celebrity. And we've talked a lot today. We're talking about the poll and then, of course, the people who are writing in, our viewers. And I have actually one of our viewers, LA Sagittarius, asked, why didn't they play the video of Cassie threatening to take somebody's life if they leaked a video, meaning the Intercontinental video? And she said she promised she would get it done. That girl was never scared. Okay, and I think they're referencing the specific audio. It was played in court, and we're about to play for you right now. So just to give you a bit of context about what all of this is, Cassie is talking to Sujin, who says he saw this video of Cassie having sex with someone, now presumably a freak-off video. And Cassie is pretty upset, understandably, about all of this, that someone else out there has this video. So then she threatens his life. I mean, take a listen for yourselves.
No, you playing games. And now we're never. Now all my friends can go, and we can stay here. Everybody can go, and we're gonna stay here. Everybody heard. So they're all leaving, and we're staying here until you show me that. I'm going to kill you. You don't understand. I don't give. I've never killed anybody in my life, but I will kill you because you're with me. With me in my life right now. If I saw a video of you doing anything that you didn't want people to see, I would show you the video so you could tell me what the happened. You're playing games with me, telling me you saw now you're saying you didn't see some. You with me. I'm going to you up. I don't think you understand. And it's not going to be my hands, and it's not going to be blood on my hands. Someone else is going to do it. So you have to tell me right now, and I'm recording this whole FYI, tell me what the you're talking about.
I tend to agree with LA Sagittarius, one of our viewers, who said that that was such an important piece of evidence because you can hear in Cassie's voice, she's saying things that are very intense, you know, because she's talking about this very private, intimate video. And I think that kind of brings everything full circle, right? Because in the defense's closings, Mark Agnifilo kind of pointed the finger, at least according to rebuttal, he pointed the finger at Cassie and Jane and said, what is their motive here? Is it money? Is that their motive? You know, that's why they're participating and working with the government. But on rebuttal, Maureen Comey pointed out, money isn't a motive. The money was already paid off way before all of this, back when Cassie filed her civil suit. Cassie did not want to testify. She had to. And I think it kind of goes to show how Cassie on the stand said, I never wanted to talk about this. I didn't want to bring it up. I wanted to do everything in my power to keep these videos secret. Her mom even took out a $20,000 loan to kind of prevent all of this from being released to the public, which it unfortunately eventually was. But I think it's such important evidence in all of this. We've got evidence like the audio, the video, and the witness testimony. So there's so much for these jurors to weigh.
You know, this point in particular puts you kind of in the shoes of one of these jurors right now, because you had the testimony, and I remember Elizabeth Milner, when Cassie testified, just talked about how emotional it was in the courtroom. I mean, she was the star witness right out of the gate. But then the defense comes back with the text messages in these cases, trying to show that she was complicit in this, trying to say that the relationship was consensual. And now as a juror, you have to take both of them. And then you ultimately decide these 12 people who will sit in this room. And these are pictures from the AP of what the jury room looks like. There are a few times that a room so bland, a picture like this, so boring, is actually super compelling to look at, because this is where the fate of Sean Combs is going to be decided. I want to bring Joe in on this point. Take us into what happens in the jury room. We know they're going to decide. We know they're going to go through evidence, but specifically, what is going to take place in that room?
Well, it could go a lot of different ways, but my sense is that they're going to pick someone that's going to be the foreperson, and they're going to probably, that foreperson, if they're objective, they're going to say, well, we could maybe approach this a couple different ways. Maybe we should start off based on the charges, figuring out where everyone is. Or maybe we should start having general discussions about what people's thoughts are and let that lead us into the cause of action. So it can be done. There's more than one way to skin a cat. It can be done several different ways. But what I'm really particularly interested in is who emerges as an advocate one way or the other, right? Who emerges as someone that says, guys, there's reasonable doubt here everywhere. We all know that he's a bad guy, but does this make him, the criminal enterprise thing has always been a square peg in a round hole for me. Who are going to be the sides? Who are going to be the folks? And is it a situation where it's going to be very, very close to being guilty or very, very close to being not guilty? And then you just have a couple people or less to actually convince, right? So hopefully somebody comes in an organized fashion and says, here's the way we can do this without anyone feeling negative or feeling attacked, etc. Because we need to have a conversation, because we're all doing our jury service. Give people the opportunity to speak, to say what needs to be said, and then hopefully they can go charge by charge, so that by the time they're done, they can say that it was thorough and they got where they needed to be, and that they served the people the best way they can in their obligation as jurors.
And you just think of the personalities in that jury room as well. I mean, I just keep looking at this list of, it ranges from a female deli clerk. She's 30 years old. There's a man who is retired in finance. He's 8 years old. Physician's assistant, 43. I mean, this is, as you look at this jury, it really kind of runs across the board of different backgrounds, ages, professions. Who is the person, to your point, Joe, who is the one, when we look back on this, that stood up and said, this is what I believe, and then people ended up following them. Got a different new court update, coming in. The judge saying, quote, for attempt, the U.S. must show intent and a substantial step taken. Mere intention does not amount to an attempt. Aiding and abetting means knowingly doing some act to aid or encourage a crime to be committed. Judge also says, for RICO, that's the racketeering charge, the U.S. must prove that from 2004 to 2024, there was an agreement between two or more individuals for a racketeer enterprise that impacted interstate commerce, that the the defendant, joined and committed at least 2 predicate acts. The U.S. must prove a mutual understanding to cooperate. You may infer its existence from the circumstances of this case. Actions may speak louder than words. You may consider the acts of all of those you find to be participants. So you're seeing the judge continue to lay out the jury what their job is going to be. I just want to say we have more than 10,000 people watching with us right now on YouTube. We really appreciate you being there. RSS9965 says, I have to say the law and crime guests have been spectacular. I absolutely agree. The coverage has also been amazing. I'm really glad we had lawyers and professionals to guide the general public through this trial. I totally agree. Joe, Dr. Hendricks, both of you are just incredible, giving us kind of just the insight of not only what's playing out in the courtroom, but how things could proceed after. And with that, Dr. Hendricks, Old Hollywood Angels asks another one here saying, will P. Diddy move away from MDC? And if yes, will he end up in general population?
Yes, if he is convicted on any of these charges. Now, I do believe they will keep him in the cell. I mean, the unit that he's in the East Building throughout the remainder of his time there. If he's convicted before he's sentenced, and even after, I don't think they'll move him over to the West Building just based on his celebrity, and probably want to just keep him safe and secure over there in that unit over in the East Building. I'm sorry. But he will be in general population, just like anyone else once he gets to his designated facility, if he is convicted of any of these crimes. And, I'm kind of interested to see if he's only convicted of the transportation charges. Since he's been in jail almost a year, I'd be interested to see, what type of sentence that he would receive. I know that he could be sentenced up to maybe 10 years, I believe, on those charges. But I'm wondering if he's acquitted on all the other charges that that they're trying to convict him on. Will he be actually sentenced up to 10 years for just the transportation? But to answer your question, yes, if he is convicted and ends up in a federal prison, he will be in general population.
That'll be fascinating to see. I mean, you listed all those different places that he could end up being. Sean Combs, does he spend a significant amount of time in a federal facility in Tucson, Arizona, or rural Illinois, wherever it may be? Poll results coming in here. Does the trial affect Diddy's legacy in hip hop and business? 7% said completely tarnished, still respected in some circles, says 14%, slightly damaged 11%, legacy remains untouched 7%. Sierra, what do you think about that? More than 2,000 people voting.
I think that this is such a great question, right? Because we have the justice system behind me. We have, the court, the real court behind me. But then we have the court of public opinion, which, as far as Diddy's fate, is, I'm not going to say equally important, but also really important. Because let's say somehow Diddy's completely acquitted. There's a sweep in a positive way for him. What happens next? And I've been asked this question a lot on my show Scandal, because we talk about all things celebrity. And for me specifically, I don't know that P. Diddy is able to recover from this, especially if we're putting aside financially, because think of the amount he is paying all of the attorneys who are in the courthouse behind me right now, who've been ongoing in this case. I mean, we're at what, week 8 right now, not to mention all of the months and months of preparation that they're being paid for. So we've got that. Then today we've heard a lot. Joe has been talking about this a lot too, all of the civil allegations against him, and if he has to go through with settlements there, or his other attorneys who will be working on that. So the financial side of things for Diddy, I don't know if he is going to be doing quite as well in the banking side of things, but as far as his reputation, I don't know if he can recover from things like this, because I've talked about this before, but let's say, for instance, Kevin Spacey, he has been acquitted of any sort of crime. I mean, other cases were dropped. There were the civil allegations where a jury ruled in his favor, and yet he's still kind of disgraced in a way. I mean, Kevin Spacey won an Oscar in 1999 for American Beauty, on top of the world. Then the allegations came out, and has he ever come back up? I don't know. And so I think even if Diddy is completely acquitted, there's so many civil lawsuits out there against him that I think if he were to come back, or have a comeback, as they say, it would definitely take some time for the public to have to forget about what we're talking about right now.
Right. But I also think too, Sean Combs has so much music out there that, we all remember, we all grew up with. Does that still, what do the streams look like on Spotify, years from now, if he's found guilty, or even if he's found innocent of this? Maybe not new projects, but to your point, I mean, how many people are not watching House of Cards when that comes up? What do the streams look like on that on Netflix for Kevin Spacey, though he may not be working on new projects? So I think it's a fascinating kind of thing that we'll look at once all of this is wrapped up. Sierra Gillespie, host of Scandal on Law and Crime. You've been awesome for this hour. I know you're going to be hosting our live stream coverage from 1:30 to 2 p.m. Eastern. So everybody who is watching us right now, you can catch more Sierra throughout the day, but holding it down from 1:30 to 2. Also on that note, we're going to have our Jesse Weber. He'll be on from 12 to 2 today. I know everybody loves to hear from Jesse. He's been one of the great voices covering this trial from the very beginning. And then our Anjanette Levy, host of Crime Fix here on Law and Crime, will be holding down the live stream from 4 to 5. As we get close to the top of this hour, where we'll be signing off, Joe, I want to turn to you, and then I'll turn to Dr. Hendricks. First off, and it's kind of the big question that, we can talk about all the specifics. How do you see this ending?
Yeah, boy, I tell you, I should put a patent on that and sell it. But my sense is, if the jury is able to decipher, separate the wheat from the chaff, and their objective, I think that he gets convicted on at least prostitution, transportation with intent for prostitution. I think that the racketeering is harder. You need a meeting of the minds. And it's not clear that there's a meeting of the minds, because I have an open question that the jury may have. Who's the co-conspirator? KK is said to be the co-conspirator, but nobody put her on the stand. And I think the fact that she's not on the stand, I think that works to the detriment of the prosecution more than anything, because the jury may be asking, why is this person that everybody's talking about not put on the stand? Then I think the trafficking is somewhere in between. There's an argument that Cassie's trafficking of Cassie is a little bit more clear, and maybe that can be shown. I think the force and threat and the coercion could come from the $20,000 demand that her mother ended up paying. Not so clear as it pertains to the other. So we'll see what ultimately happens with it. I'll be here with my popcorn, but my sense is more of a conviction as it pertains to the lowest charge, with sex trafficking somewhere in between. And I think that RICO, racketeering is going to be a little bit more difficult.
No, it's definitely a complicated charge to read through, figuring out the underlying crimes, and then it's 2 within 10 years. But exactly what does that look like? We'll see. Final update from court for this hour. If you find that the Combs enterprise existed, the judge, you must find whether it continued in a substantially similar form from 2004 to 2024. The people can change. As to the defendant being a member, he had to know of the existence of the enterprise. Dr. Hendricks, you know the system that Sean Combs could end up living in for the rest of his life. Do have a fun question in a way for you at the end of this. But first off, because I've heard criticisms of some of the federal facilities. I was watching the Chrisley documentary last night, which very different situation of Todd and Julie Chrisley, but they were talking about they felt their health was suffering because they were in a federal facility. What does life for Sean Combs look like if he is found guilty and he heads to one of the federal facilities that you listed?
Well, I mean, he's going to be just like any other individual housed in a federal prison. He'll get a job assignment. Once he gets a physical done within 14 days of his arrival. If he's healthy, more than likely he'll be working in food service. That's typically where they put inmates when they first get to federal prison. He'll be working, and he'll more than likely try to get his visiting list going, getting his family and his associates, those that are still close to him, to try to get to see him as quickly as possible. Because if he is convicted, and once he leaves MDC and heads to whatever facility that he's designated to, it'll probably be a month and a half before he has any visits once he arrives at his new facility. There has been significant challenges throughout the years, more recently in terms of healthcare in federal facilities, and a lot of it has to do with staff shortages. But it also that burden has to be put on those individuals that are incarcerated as well. They're responsible for their health, and not buying a bunch of junk food and sodas and things of that nature in the commissary, and trying to live a healthier lifestyle even prior to coming to these facilities. Now, again, Bureau of Prisons there's been a lot of criticism, and then there's a lot of work to be done. They do have a new director and a new deputy director, and I'm hopeful that there'll be some significant changes made to rebuild the reputation of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. But in terms of, I do agree with what Joe was saying in terms of more than likely he will be convicted of the lower charges. And I'm hearing that his family is preparing like a big party when he's released this week, maybe next week if he's acquitted. But I'm hoping, while I know he has attorneys watching the trial for any appellate issues, but I'm also hoping that they're preparing for him if he does have to go to prison. What is his life going to look like once he gets there, and especially if he doesn't get life or he isn't there a long time. What his life is going to be like once he is released from prison. Because at the end of the day, like I said earlier, the biggest losers of this is the alleged victims and his children. So whatever life that he wants to live beyond this experience, it may not be fame and fortune, but maybe he has to repurpose himself and live a more quiet life and again build a better bond with his family to regain that credibility. Because obviously everybody's smiling and showing that support, but behind closed doors, I'm sure there's some questions being asked, like, how did we get here? How did you put us in position? Because at the end of the day, reputation is easily kept, then recovered. So.
Yeah, no, incredibly well put. I will give you this kind of a fun final question, if you will, Dr. Hendricks from Kenor Spielman 4649. Could Diddy give concerts to fellow inmates in jail?
Not necessarily as Diddy, but they do have in the various chapels, the country, they do have music, they have instruments and things of that nature. So I don't think on concerts anytime soon. However, there is a possibility that if he's healthy and once he goes through his food service job, he could gain a job in the chapel and help out with music and different things of that nature at some point if he is convicted.
Oh, yeah, that'll be fascinating to hear the stories of what's going on the inside. If Sean Combs heads in that direction. Joe Richardson, civil rights attorney, Dr. Dwayne Hendricks, former associate warden at the Metro Detention Center, but also a retired senior warden with the Bureau of Prisons. Both of you have been awesome throughout the last hour with us. We have more than 12,500 people watching us. As soon we'll be on verdict watch. The judge is giving updates from the courtroom to jurors, laying out what the rules are going to be, and then they'll be in deliberations, and we will bring you the verdict live. When we hear it and bring you live coverage on this stream, we will also be
signing a contract doing.
All right, we are tuning into the deliberations and the predictions of Diddy. We are reviewing everything, right? We're down to the wire for Diddy's verdict, acquitted or convicted. We just heard a lot, right, from a lawyer, ex retired warden, a YouTuber, and another lawyer for law and crime, right? So what do you guys think? This is a lot to unpack. As y'all can see, I was able to get my background up, and my background's going to more so be like whenever, with my face on camera, it will more so be of whatever topic I'm talking about. Whatever the tea is, I'm going to try to get the background to, mirror whatever we're talking about, sipping tea up. So it's Diddy, right? I got the Diddy courtroom up or whatever. So that will be my background, so that whenever I do go live and not be faceless, then you guys can, have a cool little, something to play off on as we sip tea on whatever topic we're talking about. Okay. So we are everything Diddy today until the trial wraps up. And then we're also going to follow, after whatever, if he's acquitted or convicted, what that will look like for Diddy, and so on and so forth. So remember to put your notifications on, like and subscribe. And thank you, everybody that's doing so. We're going to jump now to the afternoon tea on Diddy. Okay.
Engage in or agree to engage in criminal activity. Was there an inferred agreement? And this was really interesting. Talking about the 8 underlying predicate crimes that the government has to prove at least 2 within a 10-year time frame. So there's bribery, arson, forced labor, kidnapping, drug offenses. And I thought this was interesting. I want to call this out. The judge said that witnesses who were given immunity in this case, they should be examined with greater care than ordinary witnesses. We know that there were.
And I apologize if it's a little low on the law and crime side of the game, y'all. However, please turn the computers up as loud as you can so that you can also hear what is being said, okay? Okay. Yeah.
Under immunity. That witnesses who are permitted to testify under pseudonyms, for example, Mia, for example, Jane, that bears on your evaluation of their credibility. That the defendant had no responsibility to testify. You can't attach any significance to that. In other words, because Sean Combs chose not to testify, you can't use that against him. This was interesting as well. Voluntary intoxication may actually negate the intent requirement of the RICO predicates. We'll talk about what that means. Uncalled witnesses. For example, Christina Coram, whose name came up, I don't know, every single day with almost every single witness. These people who were mentioned but never called as witnesses, each side could have called them. That's what the judge said. Don't speculate or consider this. And then finally, when they were sent back to deliberate, the judge said, schedule is your own. You're going to be provided meals. They've begun their deliberations. And if they want to continue past 5 p.m., they may be able to do so. We're going to keep a very careful eye out and ear out if we get any juror questions or what's going to happen. But right now, I want to take your questions. So I am joined right now by celebrity criminal defense attorney from McMonigle, Perry, McHugh, Meshach, and Davis. Brian McMonigle is with us. We're also joined by criminal defense attorney Mauricio Padilla and Law and Crime's very own host of Scandal outside of the federal courthouse right now, Sierra Gillespie. It's great to have you all here. I said all-star panel. I wasn't lying. Sierra, I'm going to start with you because we got a super chat question from Diana YX3GU. Thank you so much for the super chat question. Does the jury return home at the end of the day, or are they sequestered in a hotel? What do we know, Sierra?
This is a really great question because especially when it comes to a trial like this where so much is on the line, huge stakes for P. Diddy. I mean, if he's convicted, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars in prison. So we want to make sure the jury is paramount. So that is a question. Could they be sequestered? Will they, won't they? And the answer is they will not be. They were not. So every night after, the whatever happened in the courthouse behind me, they listened to all the testimony, went through the evidence, wrote in their notebooks, and then got on the subway, took a train or an Uber, walked home wherever they went, and that was their night. So over the weekend, this is something I've been thinking a lot about, Jesse. Over the weekend, after we heard closings from both sides and the rebuttal, they went back home to wherever they're going. So to me, I'm thinking it's got to be going through their minds, right? They're going to be thinking about what they heard on Friday and really throughout the entire case so far. I'm sure it's kind of been in their minds as they're leading into the deliberation. And as it continues, by the way, they'll still go home tonight once everything's finished. If we're still deliberating tomorrow, or they're still deliberating tomorrow, I should say, they'll go home. No need to stay in a hotel or be sequestered.
Yeah, if I had to take a guess, unless they were close to a verdict today, I think they're going to want to go home by 5 o'clock. I don't believe that we're coming back with a verdict today. I think there's just, this case is so complicated. They have so much material to go through. I think this is going to take several days. Maybe we'll put up a poll. Maybe we have a poll up about how long we think the jury deliberation process is going to take. Let me bring back in Brian.
I mean,
Mauricio.
say
Brian,
for instance,
you ready
I'm
for
trying
this?
out this new
We got a
lipstick,
question
y'all, that I got from Bath and Body Works called Emily in Paris Rouge Romance. I don't know. It's a little bright for me. I'm more of a brown girl, a lipstick wearer, but I decided to try to give it like a little once over or however have you. I'm not going to play around with it too much longer, but not for nothing. I think that if Diddy the jurors come back like really quickly on Diddy, his lawyers may have a problem with that. They may be like, they didn't even give it any time to really go. How could they have possibly gone through every crook and cranny for Diddy? This is Diddy's life on the line here. We understand the nature of it or whatever, and it's severe and it's serious. And that's why we don't think it took enough time to come back with the guilty verdict on Diddy's ass. So, yeah.
Leon Special One. I don't blame Leon the Special One asking this, but what's RICO? What's RICO, Brian?
Well, it's a statute that's existed for decades, and it was created to
And I look
really
like a
shut
little
down
girl.
organized crime, but it requires precisely that,
I have
racketeering.
like
And
a dry lip. I can do a matte lip though, but not like
racketeering
a dry,
enterprise,
crackly lip.
a conspiracy to commit racketeering. And you need, as is reflected in the statute itself, a criminal enterprise. So the first thing the government has to prove that there was a criminal enterprise. The second thing they have to prove that criminal enterprise engaged in at least 2 predicate acts that have been highlighted in the indictment of the many that were highlighted. And they've got to prove those acts beyond a reasonable doubt in furtherance of the conspiracy, which is the racketeering. And if the government's able to do that, then this gentleman's going to spend a long time in prison. And if they're not, as I suspect they might not,
No, Diddy.
he could be acquitted of these charges. But
Does anybody
it's
feel a
interesting
little?
because this statute,
Does anybody feel a little dirty when they put on their white fingernail polish? Like, oh my God! Remember in the case with Diddy? Now they're saying that Diddy used to make all his girls wear white fingernails because it was such like his turn on thing. I've always liked all colors of nails for the most part. So it's like, ew, now Diddy kind of makes us feel icky whenever we do little certain stuff that can remind us of the things that were ever in the Diddy trial, like baby oil and shit like that, white fingernail polish. Ugh, Diddy
RICO was created to deter organized criminal activity, and now we're seeing it in cases like this with wealthy individuals who have the money and the means by which to get together with other people and sometimes commit criminal acts. So it'll be interesting. To me, it's a very significant test case for the racketeering statute.
I agree with you. Look, the prosecution's narrative is he had these assistants, he had these bodyguards. They knew exactly what was going on. They knew exactly what was happening behind closed doors. They helped set up the sexual events. They helped clean them up. They were instrumental in the kidnapping. They were instrumental in forced labor. They were instrumental in drug distribution. They were
So now I got my
instrumental in bribery. He couldn't have done it alone. Defense's perspective, and we heard it from the defense's closing argument with Mark Agnifilo, who did he conspire with? You didn't hear one person talk about a criminal enterprise, say they were part of a criminal enterprise. Christina Coram, that's the co-conspirator. She's not a co-conspirator. And I think it was interesting because Mark Agnifilo had said, if it was John Gotti and Sammy the Bull was the co-conspirator, you think people are calling Sammy up for help? I mean, because the idea was that the alleged victims were calling Christina Coram up for help. So it raised kind of an interesting question there. Mauricio, I go to you. We got a question from LaRob Show 6300. Question is he cooked on the Mann Act charge? So that's transportation to engage in prostitution. Or does he have a shot? And overall, what's your gut feeling on the rest of the charges? More likely conviction or acquittal?
I'm thinking more likely conviction when it comes to the Mann Act of transporting, persons for the sake of prostitution. I don't know. I think they have that to rights. I've heard a lot of testimony about a lot of people that were directly engaged in it.
And I mean, that's a lot for me to unpack with Diddy, right? It's like, okay, I understand that, people are saying that Diddy was, ex-trafficking them. I understand that. However, let me bring my microphone down just a little bit. It's their word against Diddy's. That's why it kind of really shocks me that nobody testified for Diddy. You know what I'm saying? Like, all they really have is people saying that Diddy paid them for X and made sure that they got from point A to point B to be in the presence of Diddy while this Freako was going on. So it's like they're going to convict Diddy on the X with a prostitute under the guise of it being of what people were saying happened. Nobody else said anything along, you know what I'm saying, for Diddy in any type of way. Somebody could have came up there and lied. This is Diddy about to go to prison, federal prison, for probably 5 to 10 years for solicitation of a prostitute. Okay, depending on how many of those charges they make stick and whatever minimum to mandatory time they give him underneath that statute. Fuck. Nobody could have came in there and been like, you know what? Yes, people that were not in the intermediate relationship with Cassie and Diddy were involved in the bed with Cassie and Diddy, but it was not under a actual exchange for money type of situation. Something like that's crazy. It kind of seems like Diddy just kind of laid it down and said, fuck it. Because I would not want to spend if I had the type of resource and reach that motherfucking Diddy does. They don't have Diddy on camera. They don't have Diddy in a traffic stop. They don't have Diddy in any other way but people alleging that these things had happened. I didn't see any actual like proof of like exchanges, you know what I'm saying? Or hear about it, because we're not allowed in the Fed courtroom for Diddy or whatever. You see what I'm saying? Like, I did not see that for him, where it was like, okay, here's a paper trail, right, of Diddy having these transactions for X paid for a prostitute. I did not see that shit. I didn't hear it. All I heard was people alluding to the fact that it may have or have not had happened. So it's like, you're gonna, send Diddy to prison. His defense team that he's paid all this money for, allow him to go to prison, and those things were not disputed in any way, shape, form, or fashion to like the highest defense that could have possibly been played. I don't give a fuck if we get somebody here and lie and be like, yeah, I don't know, whatever everybody else got going on or whatever, but they were paid for time and attention. And if X was something that was introduced into the companion time that they came together to just spend time with these people, you see what I'm saying? Then maybe that's what had happened. But for the most part, it didn't start off intentionally being an actual encounter paid for with money. This is fucking crazy. But we're sipping tea with Tanisha Talks Teas, and we're up on the Diddy trial. So it's coming to an end, y'all. And everybody's like, well, what are you guys going to do? I have a whole content book that I have where I have idea on top of idea on top of tea on top of tea that's going to keep me busy for the next rest of my endeavor on social media. Every time I want to come live, I have a topic to talk about. Y'all celebrities and the news is stay popping, so I'm going to stay dropping some tea. Okay, so I'm a BI, and I pray to God that my sippers are as well. So just continue to keep your notification bell on, and y'all gonna see me more because I got my background figured out. Like, I am a one girl show. So like everything that I have to do with my content, I do it on my own. And so it's a lot, you know what I'm saying, just to get everything configured and set up in a interactive, you know what I'm saying, very well put together way for my set to look for y'all. And I think I got it looking pretty decent now. So let me know what y'all think, and we're gonna continue to drop some tea on Diddy.
That came out through multiple witnesses, and I think it was something that he wasn't really worried about, because I don't think, and I've said this on various occasions, I don't think P. Diddy was as conscious as he should have been about the fact. And I think it was something that was as conscious as he should have been about the fact. And I think it was something that he wasn't really worried about. That a lot of the things that he was doing were
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay dipping.